You can hear me okay, anyway, yeah?
I can hear you, yep.
Grand.
Yeah. Or just
ready to start then, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dara Staitayon, and I am an accountant here at Wellington IT. Welcome to the cuEngage event on how to develop your digital strategy, which will be led by Michael Branagan, CEO of Community Credit Union, and Paul Kennedy from Bayberry. We will be doing a question and answer at the end, so feel free to pop your questions into the chat bar, and we will answer these later on. I will now pass you over to Michael from Community Credit Union to kick off the session. Thank you, and once again, welcome.
Thank you very much, Darius, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here with Paul, and he and I are both looking forward to sharing hopefully some interesting insights for you today. Some of you might find them interesting. I hope most of you. Some of you might find them not that interesting, but we'll do our best. So without further ado, I'll fly into it, and obviously very happy to take questions at the end. We'll be having an open session then. When Wellington asked me to do this, there were three propositions they put to me. They said, look, would you talk around digital strategy? And in particular, could you maybe address some of the drivers for Community Credit Union? We're based here in Dublin West. We have a thriving community credit union. We're serving our members proudly and with passion. And obviously, like all credit unions, been looking very closely at the landscape changes and developments. So they asked me would I sort of articulate why that was important. They also asked me to give a high-level review of our strategy to date, the results so far, how we built it and who helped, and then how our IT partner is integral to that, and a number of other partners as well, and I'll go through them. So what I'm going to cover in my session this morning, which is going to last about 35-40 minutes, is a little bit about my own background and where my own digital journey started, and just then address this fundamental issue that we live in transformative times. Great book out there, From Gutenberg to Zuckerberg, if any of you have read it, which really articulates very well the seismic changes that are going on in society at the moment. And then what is digital strategy? What does it look like? What does it mean? Common pitfalls to avoid. And then people first strategy next. It's all about the people. And, my theme here today is going to be very heavily accented towards people. So your members and your team are fundamental to any strategy. And it's people first strategy next. I'll talk about the 5 pillars of an effective digital framework. I'm going to look at getting the platform right, and that's where your partners come in. So what help is out there, what tools are available to you, and talk a bit, as I said, about our own journey so far. And let me absolutely say we're very early in our journey. There's a lot of you who are way further down the path than we are, but it's an exciting journey nonetheless. I'm going to talk particularly back to the people, because change management is going with the digital strategy by definition. When you start changing processes, is fundamental change, and anybody who's been involved in change programs knows that can be challenging for people. I'm going to finish with a bit of fun at the end, because I like this. It's around growth hacking, a phrase some of you may or may not have heard it before. And growth hacking is basically today's marketing. I've talked to a lot of credit unions. I get a sense a lot of them are a bit scared by it, because you get a lot of these experts, so-called experts, who are trying to maybe ensure their own longevity, whereas I believe an awful lot of the work is actually being done by credit unions already on the ground and can be complemented by some growth hacking. So I'm going to talk through some of that at the very end. So what is digital strategy? Digital strategy focuses on using technology to improve business performance, BPR, business process re-engineering, I'm going to talk about shortly. And whether that means creating new products or reimagining current processes fundamental to it, that's part of your digital strategy. It specifies the direction an organization will take to create competitive advantages with technology, and conversely, to avoid becoming irrelevant and obsolete, as well as the tactics it will use to achieve these changes. Just in terms of my own background and how I got involved in the digital side of things, I worked with PwC over in London many moons ago. I'm a chartered accountant for my sins, but don't hold that against me. I worked in terms of a banking side. I went into GE Capital in London, and I was heavily involved in some of the technology deployments there, where I was in actually as internal audit, funnily enough, but really I was kind of a roving project manager. So one of the first things I did over there, which is I find fascinating given the journey I'm on now, is I installed what is a predictive dialer. Now this is 20 plus years ago, so it was very much early days. And for those of you who are familiar with them, you know that a predictive dialer basically came out of areas like collections and so on and so forth. The origins of it I found are fascinating, right? It was basically, I think it was a Polish guy who set it up. And some law was passed in California, which said basically that they had to be able to telephone every resident within a 20-mile radius once an accident happened. As I often used to joke, what quite they were going to tell these residents, I'll let you work out for yourselves. But anyway, this Polish guy came up and said, look, the choices are a bunch of people in a room or some much more efficient digital way of trying to exercise that particular requirement. And what he did was developed a piece of equipment that was able to filter out fax machines, unobtainables, unanswered calls, etc. Now, we have a wonderful collections team here ourselves in Community Credit Union, and our thoughts and prayers, by the way, are with one of our staff who's not well at the moment. But they do a fantastic job and have done for us. I've watched them in operation as I came in first, and you know what happens. You pick a file up, you go through it, you familiarize yourself with the file because all these calls are typically outbound. And that takes minutes. Now you multiply that across a substantial number of cases, and that's a serious amount of time. So that predictive dialer is fascinating, one of the early pieces of kit. And of course, Cabot, or my old friends who we're using now or going to be using, they're ex-GE Capital Woodchester as well. So the wheel came full circle. The automated credit scoring is interesting. I'm going to talk about CRIF later on and decision as a service. I led this, but again, 20 plus years ago in London, funnily enough. We used the sources of information available then for credit assessment were nowhere near as comprehensive as they are now. So we used things like the Tom's directory, for those of you that were around. We used Dun & Bradstreet and the Stubbs Gazette, and we were able to build up scores around that. And so automated credit scoring. And it was fascinating when I went to deploy that. Bear in mind, it was in the UK. We'd taken over a lot of branches and a lot of bank branches. And of course, they looked at me when I walked in and they basically said, no, I know my underwriting, I know my clients, I can do it much better. So we agreed to run a parallel book. We ran the automated scoring for 6 months. We ran the parallel book. We let them run their own book, etc. We beat them by about a factor of 50 in terms of the profile of the, even within 6 months. It was extraordinary. You can't beat the big numbers. And I just talked there about BPR, business process re-engineering. That's, fundamental to any digital strategy is how you're trying to improve the efficiency of processes within your business. And we have a mantra in here, which is that efficiency drives membership growth, the holy grail for credit unions, and a fundamental point I'll come back to on a number of my slides. I moved on then, for those elder lemons in the audience, to set up a company called Indigo. And Indigo was one of the first ISPs in Ireland. We really went at it. We had broadsheets all over Dublin. For those of you who remember, we launched in the pod in Dublin. We were the first national ISP to really take in the sort of firepower in terms of bandwidth that was needed. So it was fascinating. We had a phenomenal success. We grew to 50,000 members within months, 50 staff. The Windows 96 show, those of you remember Windows 95 was the great big breakthrough on desktop GUIs. That we were co-host of that with Microsoft, so really was a great success. Out of that, I was asked to join the Information Age Society from the government, and I enjoyed that. That was looking at how Ireland deals with the internet age. And finally, just moving on to Unison then as well, the Unison set-top box. I'm not sure how many of you remember that. I was 20 years too early with it, unfortunately. So it was a set-top box that made a TV smart. It's smart-enabled TVs. And you could plug it in and you could actually use the internet. And as I show, I'm going to share some of Seamus Newcomb's slides later about the internet penetration in Ireland. At that time, internet penetration in Ireland was about 30–35%. So you were dealing with a fundamentally different landscape. And as we all know, the pandemic has driven that as well. So I was excited to the potential of the internet. And I'll mention there the regional newspapers. We tried to pull them, and we did successfully, got about 30 of them together under Unison, hence the name. And they're very similar in their core passion of their communities and representation of the communities as credit unions are. So I do see a lot of overlap there. Just for a bit of fun, I remember we used to say, for those doubting Thomases out there who don't think that there is a transformational change going on, some of the ad campaigns we ran in Indigo were, if you don't think email is going to replace the fax, send me a telex, blah, blah, blah. Whether you call it the new normal, the information age, the digital age, disintermediation age, social media age, fourth industrial age, it is transformative, folks, and it's happening, and it's now. And it's fun, so don't be scared by it either. It is fun, and it's an opportunity for everybody. So with that background and arriving in credit union land 6-7 months ago, you know, I felt and I feel my timing is perfect. I think that there's a very strong social conscience. I'm absolutely motivated by the not-for-profit for various reasons. I think it's a phenomenally powerful model, and a lot more people want social banking, etc. Can I just shout out to a couple of people too? Like, obviously, you know, feeling standing on the shoulders of giants. I have a great team, great staff, and great board. They're massively involved in this, and that's a huge plus. Very few doubters on the team. We really have a strong drive and a willingness to try and improve the service for members. I want to particularly thank a number of people who helped slides. As you've hopefully got from my journey, I've been a long time at this game and a long time in the digital phrase, and I certainly don't know, probably on a scale of 1 to 10, 2 to 3. There's so much to know out there. I came across a wonderful presentation from an old friend of mine, Dave Hewitt in Salesforce, which I really felt spoke to a lot of the sort of framework issues around what's going on at the moment. And I've incorporated a number of those, so I just want to give them a shout out. And within credit union land, I have to say, I've really been heartened by the support I've got. The people out there who've opened doors and been very happy to share. And may I publicly say, I'm very happy to do. If anything I say is remotely interesting for you today, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to share. So Sean Hosford from HSSCU and his team, Mary, been brilliant. Noel Cunningham, great fun working with Noel at the moment and looking forward to more. Michael Branagan just joined the league board, as you know, it's been really supportive and helpful. Happy to share ideas. Similarly with Fiona Cunningham and her team, Adele and Jen, which we were just down with yesterday. And again, it's about sharing and pooling knowledge, and I'll talk more about that, the big pie, later on. It's got some great slides of other Jerry and others as well. So apologies if I left anyone out. And of course, not last but by no means least, our partners, Wellington. So let's move on. Situation analysis, very briefly. Look, we live in transformative times. Our members' world has changed, and we must too. Standing still is not an option. We know that. Adapt and be agile. So this technology, this language has started to creep in about agile, Scrum, etc. I'm going to talk about that. If you don't adapt, you're going to become irrelevant. Digital strategy impacts on all operations. So it's not just about members or online, etc. It actually impacts how you are processing and doing your business internally. This BPR, which is business process re-engineering, to use the old term, that is about looking at how you're doing things and improving it. But credit unions have so many positives, and I feel that in terms of getting ourselves on a level playing field with the likes of Revolut and others who have really galloped from a standing start, a classic startup scenario, you know, it's our Cinderella moment. We either get ourselves in order and get a ticket to the ball, or we won't go to the ball. There's some articles at the weekend, you probably saw it from our huge supporter, you know who, about KBC and Ulster and Bank of Ireland leaving in the Independent, and you know, challenging us to seize the moment. And I think, you know, there's an element of truth in that. Your people are key to digital transformation. They are, on a scale of 1 to 10, number 9 in the terms of importance. The digital piece and all the elements of it, about 5, but your people are number 9. And there are serious partners out there who can help. The underlying issues for credit unions, then, fundamental issues that we're all addressing at the moment, which is membership growth, lending and trying to grow lending, new products and getting out there and competing, and the rate we're getting on our investments, they can all actually be addressed through a digital strategy, a comprehensive digital strategy. So once we implement that strategy, get up on the level playing fields, I believe our core values gives us an unbelievable opportunity, and I hope I'll address some of that as we go through. And oh, did I mention COVID? So last but by no means least, COVID is driving, obviously, that change. I got the phrase wrong yesterday. What is it, that wonderful phrase? Necessity, the mother of invention. So who would have believed that your mother, your granny, your grandfather a year and a half ago, if you'd said they'd be Zooming and FaceTiming and all that, you'd have laughed me out of court. And look how quickly it's changed. This slide speaks to how it's one of the issues I've been asked to look at, how we in Community Credit Union, and we're way down, we're only early in this, are dealing with it. So, you know, when we came in for various reasons, not least COVID, the guys had written up some really good plans, but we just had not executed for a host of different reasons. So we're doing that now rapidly, and some people, you know, it's challenging the speed that we're doing it, and we're trying to do that in a meaningful way to bring the entire team along, and I'll talk more about that. So we call it Project MOD, M-O-D, members first and foremost, and fundamental to everything we do is to serve the members. Our people, only with our people on board and engaged can we do it, and we must get the culture right to be able to enable that. And digital comes third then in terms of the actual tools. It was Charles Darwin who actually said, I love this quote, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, thank God, but the ones most responsive to change. And perhaps he was prophetic in many more ways, and he saw the agile environment and the agile movement hitting town. So for some of you who know this, forgive me, I'll just go on a couple of slides. For those that don't be afraid by it. It's common sense. But agile as an environment and as a framework it's a new reality, and it compares and contrasts with waterfall. So those of us like myself who traditionally came through project planning, you came in, you needed to do this, you had 10 months or 12 months to do it. You started here, you finished there, you had different waterfall marks on the way, and you popped out of the hole in the ground 12 months later, maybe the odd time in between, and you go, here you go, there it is. That doesn't work anymore. It's about adapting, it's about pivoting, it's about being agile. So it's based out of the ICT sector. You won't be surprised, the information communication sector. It's a plan, but it's seeped now completely. It's been taken on forward as a project plan and a project modus operandi through most sectors, and is replacing waterfall. There's a couple of hybrids out there as well. And it's in essence a multidisciplinary effect, and hence the feature Scrum. So Scrum being my old mucker, the rugby Scrum, you've got big fellas, small fellas, fast ladies, slow ladies, etc. You've got that whole skill set within the Scrum, and hence the name of it. But people don't work in isolation. So product definition, which is the old case we did, somebody came in and said, what do you want to do? That has, in a sense, gone out the window. And what I mean by that is this: it is all about use case now, listening to the members. Probably, in my opinion, the most important point of the whole agile environment is use case. What that says is everything you put out there has to be showing and delivering a pain point for members. Show me what it is doing for Mary, Johnny, and Michael, whoever it is coming through that door or sitting at home online. That's what they must do. And I have to tell you, it's an area of weakness and an area I'm working on with a number of our providers, because I don't think we've done enough work around that. And I know others, the league as well, are looking at this as an area too. Minimal viable product is a fundamental principle, because again, you don't go down your rabbit hole for 18 months and pop out. You actually start to make iterative changes and do them over a period of time. And this flies in the face of some of us old timers, break it early and fix it. You say, no, I couldn't possibly go out. I have a reputation to uphold here. How could I go out and make a mistake? Make mistakes early, often. Don't make them big ones, but make them early. Do them in the right frame, the right spirit, with your team on board, and you'll learn from them, okay? So just in terms of the way this operates, I suppose the fundamentals of a Scrum is that you have literally daily meetings in most cases. And I love it. I love the simplicity of it. There's 3 questions, maybe using a Kanban board to say what you're doing, how you're developing it, and how you're going forward. And it's what are you doing today? What did you do yesterday? And what stopped you from doing what you needed to do? Full stop. So it's lovely. It's simplicity, the clarity it brings is frightening when it's properly deployed. Now, to give you an example, we started this journey, I suppose in essence, when I came on board, we are absolutely still at the start of it, because we had so many things to set up and get running, but we're at this pinch point ourselves now, and I'll talk about it in a moment. So just to finish up on the agile piece of it, as I said, MVP, minimum viable product, is the target. Get it in there early. Build on that use case, solve a specific problem, and effectively you're into the iterative loop then. Release it, evaluate it, pivot, go again. And a lot of people, I've heard a lot of criticism of some of our IT providers. I understand what they're doing. I think there could be and there needs to be more clarity around instruction for people, because what's happening is a little bit of truck and trailer, in my opinion. They are flying down with all goodwill and intentions, but they're not bringing enough sufficiently, and that's why we're committed to working with them. They're not bringing the people with them, and it's all about the people. So the question then is, with that backdrop, with the landscape we're in, what's happening in CU land, and what do our members think? Because I've heard a lot of different views here. I've heard some people say, no, our members don't want that, they're not interested in it. And I don't agree. I don't think that I think our members are special, but I think they're a representative of society out there. I think they're typical, and I think if any of you who've rolled out a digital service so far will say they are keen to use it. Now, you have to encourage, support, and cajole them in some instances, but I do believe they're no different. So I'm just going to share some stats that fly through these in terms of where we are. What are we, 20 minutes in? That's okay. So this was interesting. So member survey done around credit unions. This is, so 66% were looking for a mobile app. 45% were looking for improved online banking. 44% looking for a current account. which I believe is a must vis-a-vis the cashless payment element and what we've seen there. And then instant approval of loans. So these are credit union members we're looking at here, not somebody else. There are members, okay, not ours personally, I have to say, but they are members of credit unions. And how likely would you to be? 51% thinking they would switch if the circumstances were right and they knew about it. This is some of the nice slides that Seamus shared at the Kuma conference. I just thought they were very good, because all roads lead to Rome and all roads are leading to your smartphone. I mean, isn't it fascinating? Look at the desktop, down to 20% of people access internet over desktop, 70%, and that's going to grow, are on smartphone, and only 40% on the laptop, and 20% or 37% on tablets. So it's all about your smartphone, and it's all about having the correct technology supporting that. When I launched Indigo, internet access in Ireland was around about 35%, if I remember rightly. Look at it now, up at 90%. Ireland is a pioneer, not surprising, with all the ICT companies we have. And then into some of the specific products that we're looking to offer our members, the internet banking. You know, Ireland is a really high adopter, as we know, in terms of these. So 67% in 2019 using internet banking. So we've got to be in that marketplace if we want to stay relevant. And I love this then, the what are the issues that people are concerned about, and what changes are most likely to stay? Contactless payments. I mean, who ever thought they'd be paying for a $2.50 for a coffee and tapping their watch or their phone or their other device? Phenomenal, you know, and that's the game changer we've had. People are nearly scared of using cash now for hygiene reasons, etc. So using less cash features very heavily, more connected with the local community. A lot of people have got more on board. And you know, more shopping now. That's an area where we can help in terms of driving the credit union. I think loyal, local, and lending is the phrase the our Mehel locally here has come up with. We're going to be running a campaign. So just some of the stats Wellington came out with: 84% of the Irish public regard 24/7 as access to finances as important. That's just has to happen. You have to be there, otherwise you're going to be you're going to miss your Cinderella moment. 57% agreed that the first priorities for CEUs is to invest in online banking apps and improvements to digital offering. 58%, mirroring what we saw earlier, although even higher, said they would switch their primary provider if they knew that they had these services. A massive issue, it seems to me, and I've learned it from day one in here, is people are not aware of what we're doing. They think credit unions are providing certain services. They're not aware of how developed so many of you have got your digital strategy up to speed on and this range of services you're offering. Now, just to time out from that, so that's a little bit about the landscape. And, you know, I believe that there's a sort of transformational convergence going on at the moment. We have hit a sweet spot. COVID has undoubtedly accelerated, no doubt about it. But what members want, which you've just looked at there, which is banking and finance at their time, on their terms, lying in bed, using their phone, whatever they want to do, but convenience being the word. But that meets massive efficiency opportunity for us. And our mantra in here in Community Credit Union is, as I said, efficiency drives membership growth. The more efficient we can be, the more we can focus on members and growing them. And the sort of mantra for that is Guy Kawasaki. He was the chief strategist with Apple. Wonderful book, Enchantment. For those of you who haven't read it, I'd recommend it. And it's all about the bigger pie. Do you remember in the old days when you come up with an idea and you said, Jesus, don't tell anyone, I'm not telling anybody, I'm going to hide it, and etc. Those days are gone. Again, go back to Gutenberg, to Zuckerberg. And a lot of people struggle with that concept, because in an open, connected society, which is the reality of what we're now operating in, it is all about the bigger pie. What do I mean by that? Honesty, integrity, trust, the pillars of the credit union movement. They are the new currency. And by going after a bigger pie, i.e. going after members who would not have used your services before, we can grow exponentially. So yes, work your existing members. Yes, provide them what they need. Yes, cherish them. But work hard, and the growth hack will show you how we can do it. Work hard to grow that membership base. That's where the future for credit unions is, no doubt about it, in my mind. So grow, and that's obviously about having the ticket to the ball. You must have the services that those members are looking for, those new potential members. So growing members, growing lending, growing product lines, common theme I'm going to come back to. Reevaluate your distribution channels, as self-evident. And it's kind of back to the future. I love the dichotomy of the fact, the paradox, that we know our members through our common bond. We know every street they live on. And yet we then have this wonderful power of digital marketing to drill into them as well. So I'll come back and talk about that. So it's all about your people, though, ultimately, and that is fundamental to what we're doing. So what are the component parts of a digital strategy and what do you need? Well, I'm just going to summarize some of them here. So to modernize, or sorry, why do you need a digital strategy and what does that transformation look like? So it's about modernizing your operations by incorporating digital technologies. That predictive dialer is a good example, for example. But then we launched the CU Mobile with Wellington soft launch last week, and we can already see and obviously understand, as many of you who have done it already know, that there's really transformative potential there. Build more meaningful relationships with your members because you're going to have more time to actually understand what it is they're looking for, what they do. Maximize revenue opportunities, streamline those processes and cut costs. So increase revenues and cut costs are challenges, and we're already looking at a number of factors and projects around that. Meet the challenges of the landscape we've just described because you have to meet them. If you ignore them, you're going to be swamped. And then the elements of an effective strategy, well, it has to be strategic. So where do you want to go? How do you intend to get there? And who are you taking along for the ride? And that tees me up nicely in a moment for our people strategy. The 5 fundamental pillars of a digital strategy are the member experience, culture and environment, the operational agility, workforce empowerment, digital technology. And if you look at member experience, they're at the heart of everything, and end to end. What pain are you solving for them? What is that improvement or journey? Culture and leadership, fundamental. People are 100%, so they are 100% pivotal to this. And, you know, tech, it's not just about the tech, it's culture that needs to change. And you must get buy-in from your board and your top management CEO, and that's critical, and you must get that. We're very fortunate here. We have a phenomenally powerful board who are very visionary in terms of their view and support. Operational agility is fundamental. It's about freeing up our staff to focus on the key elements that will drive growth and membership and lending. So you must be agile. That is the new normal. Phase out and get rid of some old processes that, you know, I mean, the scanning we're doing and the stuff like that is a real challenge. We're trying to see how we can improve that. Workforce empowerment is without a shadow of a doubt the most important bullet point on these slides. So it won't happen without buy-in. You must explain the journey to them and bring them on that journey in terms of your digital strategy. And change management is key, and I'm going to talk to that in a couple of slides later on. And last, but by no means least, digital technology. So you must be able to compete. You must have an enabler, and we're fortunate we've got some great partners like Wellington and others who are providing some of that. And ultimately, the goal is a credit union in your pocket. You know, because if 60-70+ % of people are doing their financial services online, and they are, and I know we've a lot of members who like to come into the branches, of course they do, and we respect and we'll honour that. But there are a growing member, and particularly in the bigger pie syndrome, of those who will not come in if we don't have the credit union in our pocket. So how are we deploying that strategy internally? And as I said to you, I'm just going to deal and drill into the moment on the big one, which is around our people, because it's fundamental. Excuse me. It's all about a cultural change, and digital transformation is absolutely a cultural shift. Think about it. You're changing the product offerings you have for your members. You're changing the way you do things, but it really is critical to everything, in my opinion. And we've taken a particular model, which I'll share you, the good to great journey, to really show staff our commitment to this. Is not a fly-by-night. It's not a 12-month commitment. It's a 12, 24, 36, 60-month commitment to their career, their development, and them having fun. I come to work to have fun. I hope you guys come to work to have fun. I come to work to rub shoulders with people I like, to work shoulders with people who I enjoy their company. And I'm very fortunate here that we have the vast majority, and it's brilliant, are doing that. And I hope I speak for you when I say that too. So culture is everything, and it's about not team of I, it's about team of us. And it's about listening to people, it's about empowering people, and who's on that bus. So this journey, some of you will be familiar with this. This is our framework for how we're changing things within, and it is the good to great journey. And the mantra here is we want to create an exceptional work experience, because we believe that creating an exceptional work experience will create an exceptional members experience, which is the ultimate goal. Now, they are big, bold statements, and to back them up takes serious commitment. We have it, and I'd recommend that you guys look at it as well. So the pillars here are leadership. So it's Mandela and Biden, not Trump and Caesar. You know, it's first the most important thing, get the right people on the bus. If you have the wrong people, you will waste time, you will be disillusioned, and your team will be disillusioned. Have the right people on the bus, and identify what those resources are. As Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. The brutal facts, dealing with, you know, where are we at the moment? Don't hide from them. And then this whole idea of the hedgehog, I love this. It's what are we passionate about? And we can answer that easily as credit unions. We're passionate about our members and serving them. What are we best at? Well, we believe delivering services to our members in that not-for-profit, ethical financial services mode, and generating income, increasing our products and services. So once you have that defined, decisions within that journey become much easier to make. Does that fit in with our strategy? Does it fit in with our brutal facts, yay or nay? And culture, as I said, is fundamental to it. And we are really, so you'll notice technology is only almost a footnote there, because technology is an accelerator. This is about people, and disciplined people, disciplined thought, disciplined actions. I'm not looking over my management team's shoulders. We work together as a team. It's their job to get on and do their job. It's my job to make sure they can do it, and to support them, and to make sure we have a strategic vision that we're all working to, and it's well communicated. So that model there, as I said to you, is the model itself. Exceptional work leading to an exceptional members experience. And we're delighted we're working with Metamo as our HR partner, Kieran and Alan, super people, and really pleased with what we're doing with them and excited about the journey ahead. One of the tools here is around the digital teams. I'll fly on this. Just so we're breaking up into teams. That's the piece we're at the moment. We are really trying to promote and work from within, seeing what skill sets we have. And, you know, we will have to take probably one or two more people on board. We will be, I believe we will be looking for a digital transformation type officer and one or two others. But the primary focus is our team. I want to develop them and allow them to grow. And a number of, they have the skills, bear in mind, and don't let anybody fool you. Digital strategy is about, you know, a lot of buzzwords out there, but don't let people put you off. The people at the front line know more about your members and more about what they need and want than anybody coming in who's an outside expert. So do you ignore that at your peril. And one point I want to address here is this whole idea around teams. Google did research recently saying, to see which of their teams were their best performing. And the one characteristic the teams who were best performing had was, I feel safe. In other words, I can speak my mind. I understand what I'm not disrespectful, but I can speak my mind. I can talk. I'm listened to, etc. And I'm supported. I feel safe. That's our goal. I want my people to feel safe. I want them to be respected. I want to listen to them. And then I'll demand of them disciplined hard work, but we'll have fun on that journey. So then moving into the digital space, the last piece of our jigsaw, what we've got here is a roadmap, which, as you can see, goes through all of the different products that we've got from, we're working closely with Wellington on. I'll talk through a number of them momentarily. And we're looking at, you know, rolling these out. The digital pathway, the new website is up, digital onboarding. The decision as a service is fascinating. I love that because that's back to my old underwriting days. So we have a responsive website, which we've got up and running soon. The team got that up and did a lovely job with Wellington on it. We've got the digital onboarding. That's really working well. And what they're saying now is that it's now going to save 45 minutes per application. We want everybody to be on board there, obviously in due course. The CU mobile app is fabulous. We've got that coming up. The guys have got some really good work around open bank payments as well. And, you know, that whole peer-to-peer lending as well, and the ability to access bank statements, etc. online. They're musts. But they're on the way. At least Wellington, in fairness to them, they're working hard on that, and they have a good product rollout line with Ying and Declan and the guys down there. So the only one I've got to talk to here is, you know, a lot of these, but we've rolled them out as part of our strategy, or in the process of rolling them out, is the robotic process automation. And there's some interesting work going on there. Ian Cowell down in Grant Thornton, they've come up with some good stuff, really initially around the AML stuff piece. But Mary Peters and Sean over in HSCU are doing some very interesting work. We're working with them at the moment and looking at it around members forgetting passwords and stuff like that. So these bots can improve that. Again, you know, if it's going to improve and remove redundant processing, I have people here at the moment having to sit down for hours to go through and reply to emails. If I can do that automated, happy days. They can then really develop and grow the book. So common mistakes to avoid in this digital transformation. There's no clear consensus on your goals. That's very important. Make sure you've got clear goals. So adapt to new technologies to solve problems. Don't do it just for the sake of it. We've looked at that clearly. We know, and the landscape I've demonstrated or talked about shows you what's going on there and how it's imperative to have the product line that we're looking to roll out, we believe. Make sure you address those pain points. And then when you know what you're trying to do, map them out in the sort of short, mid, and longer terms. And I'm working on that at the moment. We're working on our project planning. The workforce isn't prepared, fundamental. Make sure that they are, because freeing up your staff to focus on the real value relationship, that's the goal and the reward at the end of the day. New skills will be required, so you've got to do that. And you're not flying solo. Make sure you don't. Bring partners. And we're very lucky here. The fact that we were a little bit slow coming to the marketplace for various reasons has actually allowed us to piggyback on the shoulders of giants, as I said, and learn from what others have done and learn from some of their mistakes. And I'm very grateful to other credit unions who've shared that information with me, and I happily will share it with anybody else. So dealing with change management, the most fundamental issue in digital strategy, and it's around, Voltaire, I love this quote, no problem can withstand the onslaught of sustained thinking. So think it through, go through it. The challenge for your staff, they're in that comfort zone, but you're bringing them on a journey out of that comfort zone, into the growth zone, through the fear zone, through the learning zone. So don't underestimate the challenge. There are tools out there that you can use. A few of us on the board, we're continually learn every day. We just finished a course around change management again. Stuff that we'd looked at before, but it's brilliant to get that refresher and have it right back in your mind. So Lewin's model, change model, is an interesting one, because obviously in credit unions, we've done things such a way for so long. So this idea is you unfreeze, get in there, change things, and then freeze again. And that allows people to settle down, sit and relax and say, okay, let's get used to this. So freeze, unfreeze, change, freeze. It's a good model. It's not bad. The one we're working on is this Kotter, is the classic 8 steps for model. So create a sense of urgency. I think I promised my team that I wouldn't speak to them. I wouldn't talk for the first 6 months of my in here. I think I lived up to that, team, didn't I? Not quite. I couldn't resist, I'm afraid. But I wanted to create a bit of urgency, and we certainly did that. But we needed to, because we were way behind the ball, way behind the curve. Build a guiding coalition. The board have been superbly supportive of what we're trying to do. The staff have bought in across the board. Now, they had issues. We launched some PCs the other day, new PCs. We had some issues. We're working on that with our partners, and they a bit of kickback from one or two. But in the main, they saw the bigger picture. They see the bigger goal. They understand the strategy. So they take some pain and we get on with it. Form that strategic vision and initiatives. We're working on that. Enlist a volunteer army. That's my people. That's our staff. They're brilliant. Enable action by removing barriers. No hierarchical barriers. Agile, scrum, pivot. Work together as a team. Be respectful. Generate short-term wins and celebrate them. Sustained acceleration. We're at that phase now where we need a second push on now in terms of the team structure and how we're going to manage going forward. And institute change. So really powerful stuff. Now, I think the future is really bright for credit unions. I'm conscious of I'm up to 40 minutes. I'll wrap through this as quick as I can, etc. So the future I really feel is bright. So, but my advice is get your digital transformation going. Get yourself onto that level playing field. Get a range of products that your members want. They want them, or they're going to be looking for them. The community involvement and support we have is unrivaled, I believe, and that's an incredibly positive in terms of going forward. And as a not-for-ethical financial institution, I believe we're an unbeatable proposition once we have the landscape developed and the product range. And as I said, the issue is awareness is a fundamental. People are not aware what credit unions are doing. So make them aware. You're in the community, you're on the ground. So how do we focus on awareness? Let me have a bit of fun here for a second, just talk about growth hacking. I'm going to fly through this for time reasons, but what is growth hacking? Growth hacking is really a marketing device for getting your name out there in front of people using some social and digital techniques, but it's also non-digital. You can do this in a non-digital way as well if you follow the logic of it, and it's fun. So why should I care? Well, there is a revolution taking place in the growth of marketing, in the world of growth marketing at the moment. Those that understand growth hacking will have a competitive advantage that is hard to overstate. It's focused on acquisition and retention of members. I'll talk about that in a minute. Do it yourself. You know your members. Don't feel if somebody says to you, oh, I need to bring in some big ad agency. Now, if you've got the firepower and you do it, great. Away you go. You can do this. You know your members. It is not as difficult as you think, once you stick to some guiding principles. And it's the perfect foil for the work that we do on the ground. If there's one mantra here in the credit union is we know our members. Great. And we do so much sponsorship on the ground. Brilliant. but we're not leveraging that the way we are. You should work with your sponsors in a much more detailed way, work with your community, because there's tools I'm going to show you now that can allow them to spread the gospel, spread the good word. And I believe it's an open goal for credit unions. So growth hacking, it's not just digital, as I said, defining actions, leveraging your strengths, executing experiments, etc. Keep trying stuff. This is the growth hacker funnel. And let me just talk about this, the famous one for those of you who've been through some of the digital schools, etc. It's the old Pyrrhic metrics, HAR, HAR, GAR, GAR, get visitors, activate, get members, activate members and retain them. The bit I'm going to focus on here is the getting members, because if you look at what we need to grow, there is a bigger pie, and look at what some of the research is telling us. People don't know we have these services. So, there's 3 techniques for getting out there. There's a pull, there's push, and there's product. And that's the element I'm looking at the moment. I'm just going to talk about. So on pull strategy, give them a reason to come to you. Could be blogs, seminars, guides, infographics. Look at what Choosy, look at the Independent. It miffed me when I saw it. I have to take my cap onto them, given Unison was sold to and became Independent News, and then media was us in Unison back in 2001 when they took us over. But Choosy have come out talking about we can get you better utility rates, better phone rates, etc. Why? Because you trust us. Well, I think nobody trusts anybody more than a credit union. We should be doing that and offering that. That's a part of why people would come and understand. We've just launched People Insurance, which is great, another lovely product. Obviously, we're working with Seamus. We passionately believe in the current accounts longer term, purely for the debit, the cashless payment, and for the new members we're going to reach out to. It's a need, you must have it. Looking at the push strategy, then it's designed again towards pushing members. This can cost money, but it's that wonderful marketing paradox. 50% of my marketing budget is money well spent, and 50% a waste of time. I just never know which 50 is which. Well, we know our people, so it allows us to do a digital marketing campaign on one level, but then a ground up campaign. I'm looking at my common bond map as I speak to you. I know, not alone do I know my members, I know the street they live on. It's powerful as a construct. And then product is the third. Again, this is hugely important. Our members trust us. They can talk about us through the sponsorship you're doing, through the clubs you're doing, through the old age stuff that you're supporting. Make sure they know about us and facilitate them in telling. So the CU mobile app, for example, is a really wonderful way of doing that. I have this vision. You've seen a little coffee van there with Community Credit Union of it. I love the idea of having a digital van parading through our common bond area with our community angels, me being one of them, maybe an archangel, over the next coming months. Because why? We are for the people, by the people, from the people, and we want to talk to them. We want to be faces. We don't need big fancy branches to do that. We need, in the new world that we're all entering into. So finishing up, just to say the future for credit unions, 2 slides you'd be pleased to hear, and then I'll hand over to Paul. Number 1, grow your numbers. It's a bit of bigger pie. Number 2, grow product, grow lending, get new products out there, use the viral element. And members want to use us, not for profit. They like that. We give to communities. Have a suite of product, get out there with some of them, and you have to go cashless, in my opinion, if you really want to compete in that space. Members want convenience. That's where and the younger members in particular want convenience on their terms. Trust your staff, support them, develop them, listen to them, don't tell them, work with them, and use tried and tested growth hacking techniques, some digital and some non-digital, to get that. I talked the K factor, the net promoter score. Get people talking about you. Your members are your biggest ambassador. So 5 things then, finishing up, last slide, that you need to do. Your members' needs are changing. Your operating environment is changing. Realize that you have to adapt to survive. The 5 pillars I've sent out there are as a guide. There is help, embrace it. And a successful digital strategy is 100% all about your people. So apologies, Paul, for slightly running over. I hope some of that made some sense to you. I'm going to try and stop sharing screen now. So let me just see if I can do that. So stop screen. Okay, great. Now, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you, Michael.
Great. Okay, so listen, without further ado, lovely. That's great. I'm going to hand over to Paul. I hope, as I said, you enjoyed that, and happy to take questions later.
Hi, Paul. You might be muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Yeah. I'm just going to share my screen there. Hopefully everybody can see that.
Yes.
Yeah. Very quickly, thank you all for being here today, and thank you for inviting me, Wellington, to speak a few words about our experience of digital and in a digital world, both here in Ireland and abroad. I'm a partner with Bayberry Consulting. Some of you guys may or may not have heard of us. We've been in the, I suppose, in the credit union space for nigh on 20 years in one shape or another. In addition to being in the credit union world, we have worked with firms in financial services, retail, government, and that around the world. So some of the things we've done in Ireland, we've involved in some quite novel projects in the credit union space. We would have been responsible for the design and delivery of the first debit card and payment account for credit unions in Ireland with St. Paul's Garda Credit Union. We've been involved in leading the transformation of St. Patrick's ESB to Savvy. The Association of British Credit Unions in 2005, going back that far, we helped them set up the first centralized payment card service for credit unions in the UK, much like what Payac and so are now today here in Ireland. That's almost 16 years ago now that I think of it. And I suppose we've seen technology from all variations, from all different vendors come and go over the last 20 years in the credit union space in Ireland, from core banking systems to middleware to front-end channels like mobile and internet to card providers and so on and so forth. And it's been quite interesting, exciting to see how that's evolved. I also kind of reflect back on some of the larger firms that we worked with on different projects, as you see some of the names up there. And many of those firms, despite the sheer scale of them, the challenges they are faced are not hugely different to what the credit unions face. The only difference is purely the size of the organizations. However, I would contend that they've probably started what might be considered digital strategy much earlier than credit unions, and they've realized the shortcomings in their thinking when they look at digital strategy, and they approach that now more in the terms of transformation. So digital strategy versus transformation, this can be a little bit contentious, and people might say I'm nitpicking, but in my view, digital strategy is not something new. In fact, it's been evolving for decades. You know, sending documents quicker meant moving from post to fax, then from fax to email to maybe Slacks or MS Teams. Internet and mobile certainly aren't new. I mean, in the last 15, 20 years, we've always been having conversations or been engaged with organizations, credit unions and others on internet and mobile and cards for, you know, as long as I can remember in Bayberry. So again, it's not new, and people have been surveyed for many, many years demanding these services from credit unions and from banks and so on. And so they're now basic table stakes. In fact, if I look at what's happening, you know, in a more global space, things like robotic process automation, which are kind of new and are, you know, becoming more prevalent in Ireland, have already been moved on from in the global sense. People are now using IPA, which is intelligent process automation, and using artificial intelligence, so on and so forth, for essentially the machine to make decisions past the human. So it's already leapfrogged past RPA. So I suppose my point would be that a digital strategy is, one could say, simply new buzz term for something that's been happening over the last 20 or 30 years. It's not the panacea to all the problems, and it's only a small part of addressing a bigger issue. The bigger issue is transformation. and transformation for the digital world. And as barriers to entry and to the marketplace are falling away as we speak, with more companies who are able to reimagine the business model and create more value for their end users, this presents great opportunity, but it also creates a massive threat, and particularly for credit unions. And I would contend that credit unions need to be focused on what transformation means to them, and then, as only one of the tools, create and execute a digital strategy to deliver that transformation. And that brings me back to the previous point. The big firms that I mentioned, they're focused now on how they transform their business models, as opposed to their first, I suppose, learning mistake was they purely focus on digital strategy. Let's bring in process automation. Let's become more efficient, more profitable. And they didn't actually think about, in 5 years' time, what does my business look like? The market has changed so quickly. I need to have a transformational business model. And that's what I need to be moving towards. Again, some of you may or may not be familiar with Professor Teixeira from Harvard Business Review. The most important thing on this slide actually is that Uber, Airbnb, Slack, all of these unicorn firms that we see coming along, they seem to have amazing technology. Actually, they have the same access to the same technology as any of us do, any organization. Technology has become democratized. What really is their magic sauce is that they have the ability to build and deliver faster and more accurately exactly what the customer wants. So the technology is only a tool is accessible to us all nowadays. But their whole organizations and their culture and their vision for a business model is built in an agile way that allows them to scale and respond very, very quickly. So are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? We might think we have mature businesses. The credit union sector is obviously very mature. It's been around for many, many years, very long standing. So it is true from a certain perspective that we have a mature business. But to build the digital world really is a new era that is quickly evolving. And I would say we require almost a rebirth of the credit union business model. And the question for credit unions is, what do they want to be as they grow up in this new digital world? And for that basis, you need a transformational business model. And if I was looking at this from the outside in, I would controversially possibly say that maybe the biggest and most difficult hurdle for credit unions is not technology, it's not cultural change, it's not necessarily cards or payments, because those things be addressed. I would actually contend that the current regulatory status that credit unions are classified under is probably the biggest hurdle to survive and thrive in a digital world. And our reasoning around that is that at the end of the day, our business models must be based around making money so that we can grow and thrive and reinvest and provide better services to our members. And it's quite restrictive with current regulatory status here in Ireland to allow that to happen and to respond to what the customers and our members need in the marketplace in the broadest sense. And there's more organizations who are entering into the space that will bite more of that pie, whether it's the neo-banks such as the Revoluts and so on and so forth, who many of the large institutions, the large financial institutions think, well, they're not really a threat because they're just doing kind of current accounts and payments and things like that. Well, it only takes for a large global player to buy those out and bring in the balance sheet behind them to start offering loans across those technology platforms. And that changes the landscape here in Ireland very, very quickly. So it's interesting. We've investigated changes to regulatory status here in Ireland a couple of years ago and looked more around the community-owned banking type model that is starting to become prevalent in Australia and other places. And it actually is possible to be done. I'm not saying it's straightforward, but it is done, and it's certainly something that should be considered. If you were to ask me, I would possibly sit down and create a vision of how credit union and society looks like in 5 to 10 years without regulatory change and with regulatory change. And then lovely government with the required ask will do that group. And as a group, you need to design what a transformation model might look like. So this is something that really is become more, I suppose, more of an issue here in Ireland in particular. Do you know the name of your bank manager? And I say this again just to slightly poke fun, but as background, I'm with Bank of Ireland Stillorgan for probably 27 years, 28 years. And I don't have a clue what my bank manager's name is. And apparently I'm a premier customer, whatever that means. I know I get a little black card and that's about it. And I have a relationship manager, but I couldn't tell you who they are. I haven't heard from them. I haven't been actually in their branch for several years. Again, my business accounts are with some of AIB. Apparently we have a relationship manager there. I couldn't really tell you who that person is. And that's a great example of digital gone wrong, because the focus from, I would contend, has primarily been in the financial services sector in Ireland around a digital strategy for cost reduction and efficiency, rather than a business model of transformation that meets customer need. Now, that's fine if you want to go to the latter, the former, if your business model begins with a digital-only proposition, such as Revolut or N25. But Revolut and N25 are very, very clear about what their proposition is in the digital-only model. And customers will join because they know exactly what it is they will be getting from Revolut or N25 and are offered tailored services around that digital-only business. But for the Irish banks, that's not necessarily where they've set out. They have a broad range of services that need to be fulfilled in person and digitally. And I would contend that that's an example of how they failed in their initial digital strategy, because they've lost sight on that. And actually, that's the real opportunity for credit unions. And it picks up on many of the points that Michael made earlier on about being omnipresent in the community, because your common bond for community-based credit unions in particular are within the local area, within a certain mile radius of your buildings, and therefore you should be the dominant player in that particular area. And connecting back with the customer with a transformation model that embraces the right mix of digital technology, revised business process, new propositions, and consumer-facing channels in a mix that the customer requires and how the customer wants to engage with you. This then moves on to probably the most important thing. Again, it's very similar to what Michael has said. Credit unions are a trust partner. The most important surveys that I've seen coming out over the last few years has never been around usage, it's never been around channels or technology or payments. It's been around what is the most trustable brand in the marketplace, and credit unions score very, very highly in there. That's something that is your biggest asset. And how do you build on that? And how can you provide a range of services that that people will come to in a credit union because of their trust? And I was very interested in what Michael said earlier on about cost comparison websites and so on and so forth. That's a clear opportunity for credit unions to be a trusted broker in all of those services, and indeed being a trusted broker for financial advice and so on and so forth, beyond just the traditional means of making money from revenue on lending, and being seen as an entity that is identifiable and more approachable. These are the things that the Irish banks in particular have lost, despite their significant marketing campaigns. So I would contend that the Irish financial services scene, I don't include necessarily the credit unions, but the wider scene, is a long way from a mature model. It's lacking, or has lost rather, customer intimacy. Democratization of banking is something that many organizations are not necessarily realizing is coming down. Open banking has caused that and has created that opportunity. The entry of neo banks such as Revolut and those are creating democratization of banking. So the point being, you no longer need to make an appointment with the branch manager of a bank like we once did in the 80s to sit down. Banking now can be addressed through many, many different types of organizations, both regulated as payment service providers to e-money institutions, through full banks and so on and so forth. Trust in business. Trust is something that has been lost traditionally in the financial service sector in Ireland, and I think it's something that the credit unions, that we just mentioned earlier on, have in abundance. The consumer trust in credit unions is huge. Again, how do we build on that? So most solutions to digital are a square peg in a round hole. Again, this has just been our experience over the years, and there's a couple of reasons that I would see, or errors that I have seen, that often come to mind. I suppose the first one is get me off the mainframe. Kind of an American saying, but this quite often is an obsession that the technology we have is useless. It's not good enough. We've got to get off that. We've got to go to something different, something shiny or something newer, and that's often the case. Mainframes do a really good job still, and some of the banking platforms and technology that you guys have at the moment still doing a good job. Actually, quite often the problem is your processes that sit in front of that. People want to bring on new technology to support their existing processes, as opposed to sitting down and saying, well, actually, maybe our processes suck. Maybe we need to be doing something different and better there. And that's the first port of call before necessarily saying, well, it's all about the technology. The problem is the technology. Another problem or error I often see is the trying to replicate in-branch processes online. Your online channels need to be considered almost like a different business. It's a different experience, it's a different reasoning for people to go there. And to try and just simply replicate everything that you do in branch in an offline world, online, will more than likely will become unstuck. Inertia, regardless of what organization, whether it's a credit union, a bank, or the largest retailers in the world, inertia is commonly the biggest challenge to transformation. The concept of this is how we've always did it, and why change what's not broken. Picking a technology and then saying this is fantastic technology, now let's make our business work around that. Again, major error. You must understand what it is you want for your business, and then select a technology that can enable the business and not the other way around. Failure to select the right technology is often considered to be a project failure. And this is not true, because the best thing, or one of the most important things you have to be able to do, is to know when to say stop. And I've seen it in Ireland and other places, technology projects where they've gone into multi-millions, and it's only when they've got into the middle of the project that they realize that despite everything that due diligence was done and so on and so forth, the technology, often for normal reasons, just isn't a fit for the institution or the credit union. But being able to say stop and learn from that and understand what happened and then go forward again is very, very critical. Going blindly after this and continuing to using the technology is definitely the wrong approach. A lack of focus on availability. People put together disaster recovery plans and so on and so forth, and business continuity plans, but they're great. But even more simple things, opening hours. Would it be controversial to say that actually we stay open until 6 or 7 o'clock on a Saturday evening, or stay open until 9 o'clock Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so that people who have very busy life schedules now and work schedules and so on and so forth, albeit may not be commuting as much, can come in and meet at a time that suits them best. So I just move on. This is just one of many, many templates and models that we have when we're mapping out a digital transformation or a business model transformation. We go from how is the market evolving? Are your services relevant to customers? What are the growth opportunities? Are we under threat from disruption? Where to focus, and then preparing an innovation framework. I won't spend too much time on this, conscious of where we're at, but being able to create an innovation framework is critical, because the implementation of a new technology or a new business process or a new product, that's not the end of your journey. The staying ahead in this digital world, we have to constantly reinvent, and we have to be thinking about what is next. And that innovation framework allows you to create a pace whereby new ideas, new technology, new products can be constantly brought to market. So what successful firms acknowledge? Again, Michael mentioned this earlier on, culture still eats strategy for breakfast, and actually execution eats strategy for dinner. So getting the right culture in place and being able and getting the ability to execute are the critical things. A directional roadmap for a transformative business model. A directional roadmap is, again, Michael mentioned earlier on about waterfall. Think of it in the same way. You know directionally where you want to get to over the next 3 to 4 years. The only amount of detail that you have on that for sure is probably the next 3 to 6 months. And then for the next 6 months onwards, you have milestones that can be tweaked and can be changed as you get closer to them, and you get more detail and understanding as you get closer to them. But you can't have everything mapped out to the nth degree. But you need to know where that new target destination is going to be. C-level must be battle ready for the digital world. In the largest of organizations down to the smallest of organizations, a root and branch review of the board and the executive level to say, are these people the right people to be able to support and lead and navigate our new business model in a digital world? And that's something that takes, it's often very difficult to come to terms with, but I would strongly advise that this is something that all credit unions should sit down. Do I have the right board to begin with to navigate this digital world? And then do I have the right senior executive team for that? Again, as I said earlier on, transformation is perpetual. And as part of transformation, you need to continually innovate. And it must be part of your DNA. And given the credit union sector for collaboration and so on and so forth, don't look at innovation as silos, as credit unions on your own. Sit down, work around innovation, whether it's marketing, whether it's technology, whether it's new products and services, or even around regulation. But try and collaborate on what innovation, and set up working groups that are purely focused on the next layer. Pace layering is a concept that we use with many organizations. It may not be as the big an issue for credit unions, but it certainly is for large firms, where because of inertia and because of just the organizational structure, they're not able to innovate, they're not able to create spin-outs, or they're not able to transform as fast as they need. So what we typically get employed to do is to create a new pace layer, where we will set up almost a new business that will be tasked with creating the new business model for that organization, for that corporate, and to actually set that up, create it, get it running, and then to migrate the core business or the parent organization back into that. An example of that is over the last 18 months, we just set up a 90-person artificial intelligence division for a large US corporate, both here and in Chicago. And that entity that we set up and we hired and put together the strategy, the model, and so on and so forth, they will become the future for that organization over the next 3 to 5 years. And that organization has 12,000 people working for it in addition. So that's an example of pace layering. And again, as I said earlier on, collaboration is critical. So, you know, I hope that's been of some interest and some useful. I've kind of sped through some of the key topics, and I'll hand it back to Wellington.
Thanks for that, Paul. That's great. Listen, thank you so much for putting it together. Michael, thank you again for your time as well. A lot of information in there. We've ran over a little bit, so apologies, but interestingly enough, really didn't lose that many people. So I think it must have been, you've kept them all captivated. I didn't get any questions in the message bar. We possibly will park a Q&A just because of the time, unless anyone wants to shout out now really quickly. Apart from that, we'll probably just leave it for now. But thank you so much for your time, guys. Really interesting stuff.
That was super, Emma. Thanks very much. Well done, Paul. I really enjoyed it. I hope there was some the odd pearl and all that, as they say.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers. Take care. See you later, folks.